You're lying on the couch. Nothing is due. Nothing is burning. And yet some part of your chest tightens like you're forgetting something urgent. You are not forgetting anything. You are just resting. But your brain doesn't seem to believe that rest is allowed. Somewhere underneath the calm, a quiet alarm keeps going off, telling you to get up, to check your phone, to do something, anything. Why does stillness feel like a crime? The strange part is that this feeling didn't start with deadlines or bosses or notifications. It started long before any of that existed. To understand it, you have to go back roughly 200,000 years to a version of you that had no calendar, no clock, and no concept of a productivity app, but somehow still felt the same tug of unease when the group around them looked too relaxed for too long. Picture a small band of early humans on the savannah. 15, maybe 20 people. No walls, no locks, no stored food that would last more than a few days. Survival was not a metaphor for them. It was a full-time, group-wide project. If the group stopped noticing the world around them, even for a few careless hours, that carelessness could be lethal. A predator in the grass, a storm on the horizon, a rival band moving in on a water source. So evolution did something clever. It didn't just make effort feel rewarding. It made idleness feel faintly wrong. Not painful exactly. Just uncomfortable enough that you'd rather get up and do something than sit still and wonder if you should be worried. This is where the anthropologist James Sussman's research on the Juhwanzi people of the Kalahari Desert becomes so revealing. Sussman spent years documenting how these modern hunter-gatherers, whose lifestyle closely mirrors that of ancient humans, actually spend their time. What he found broke almost every assumption about prehistoric life. The Juhwanzi typically worked around 15 hours a week to meet their material needs. The rest of their waking hours were spent resting, socializing, storytelling, and doing what looked, by modern standards, like doing nothing at all. Here's the twist. They did not describe this time as idle. They didn't feel guilty about it. Rest was not the absence of purpose. It was woven into the rhythm of survival itself, as necessary as the hunting or the gathering. The guilt you feel on your couch would have been almost unrecognizable to them. So if ancient humans weren't wired to feel guilty about rest, where did your guilt come from? The answer isn't really about rest at all, it's about vigilance. Your ancestors' brains were built to stay subtly alert, even during downtime, because true safety was never guaranteed. That low hum of alertness, that small itch to stay useful, kept early humans scanning, listening, ready to react. It kept them alive long enough to become your ancestors instead of somebody else's cautionary tale. Fast forward to today, and that hum hasn't gone anywhere. Your environment changed completely. Your nervous system did not get the memo. This is where the psychologist Roy Baumeister's research on self-control becomes useful. Baumeister and his colleagues found that humans have a strong, almost automatic drive to conserve resources and prepare for future threats. A mental habit he linked to what he called the psychological immune system. In modern life, with no lions in the grass and no genuine famine on the horizon, that same threat preparation instinct doesn't just disappear. It looks for something else to attach itself to. And in a culture built entirely around output, productivity itself becomes the new predator. If you're not achieving, some ancient part of your mind quietly assumes danger must be near. There's another layer to this, and it comes from an experiment that seems, at first, to have nothing to do with guilt at all. In 2010, the psychologists Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert, both at Harvard at the time, ran a study using a phone app that pinged people at random moments throughout the day, asking what they were doing and how happy they felt. The results, published in the journal Science, were striking. People's minds wandered nearly half of their waking hours, and when their minds wandered, they were measurably less happy, regardless of what they were actually doing. Here's the part that matters for you. The unhappiness wasn't caused by rest itself. It was caused by an idle mind reaching for something to worry about. Give your brain empty space, and it will very often fill that space with self-criticism, unfinished tasks, or vague anxiety about the future. Not because rest is bad for you, but because an unoccupied mind, shaped by millennia of vigilance, doesn't know how to simply be unoccupied without treating it as a warning sign. So the guilt you feel isn't really about laziness. It never was. It's an ancient alarm system, misfiring in a world that no longer needs it to fire nearly as often. Now think about what surrounds you today. Notifications that mimic urgency every few minutes. A culture that treats busyness as identity, where the question, "How are you?" is so often answered with "so busy," like it's a badge of honor. Job titles and social feeds that reward visible output over invisible recovery. None of this existed for your ancestors. And all of it teaches your already vigilant brain that stillness equals falling behind, that rest has to be earned, that if you're not producing, you might be in danger of becoming irrelevant. Your ancestors' alarm was calibrated for lions. Yours has been recalibrated for inboxes. There's a particularly telling detail in later work building on Sussman's research and other hunter-gatherer studies, including fieldwork among the Hadza of Tanzania, led by anthropologists like Frank Marlowe. These studies consistently find that rest, in societies without industrial schedules, isn't scheduled around guilt or reward. It happens whenever the body signals it's needed, and it ends the same way. There is no concept of earning downtime through prior labor. There's just a rhythm, need, and replenishment, moving in and out like breathing. Somewhere in the last few thousand years, and especially in the last few hundred, that rhythm got broken. Agricultural societies introduced fixed harvests and fixed hours. Industrial societies introduced clocks and shifts. And what emerged was a moral story layered on top of an ancient survival instinct. Rest is something you deserve only after work, not something your body simply requires, like water or sleep. But your body never signed up for that story. It only ever asked one question: is it safe to power down right now? For your ancestors, that answer was tied to the actual environment around them. For you, it's tied to something invisible, a cultural expectation that never switches off. Understanding this doesn't make the guilty feeling vanish instantly, but it does something almost as useful. It gives the feeling a name and a much older origin than your to-do list. The tightness in your chest on the couch isn't a verdict on your character. It's an alarm calibrated for a world that hasn't existed for thousands of years, still trying to protect you from threats that are no longer there. So the next time you're doing nothing and that quiet unease creeps in, you might recognize it for what it actually is. Not evidence that you're falling behind, just an old, overcautious guardian, still standing watch long after the danger it was built for has disappeared. You're lying on the couch. Nothing is due. Nothing is burning. And for the first time, maybe that tightness in your chest isn't a warning at all. Maybe it's just an old habit, finally allowed to rest.